All right, you guys, here we are with our reading of chapter 2 of Anthem. And I just want to give you a quick recap of some important uh, segments from the first chapter. I guess what we want to key in on is that equality is living for himself. And he is obviously the first, really, to do it in such a bold fashion. We know that he up until his finding of the underground tunnel, lived a very monotonous and unfulfilling life, getting up, doing the same thing every day without real purpose or direction, only because he was told to do so. And then upon his discovery, he realized that there was so much more to life in pursuing his own goals and ambitions, which for him is just to learn and really to just be a scholar and a scientist. And so he's pursuing that in his underground tunnel. I want to key in on the last sentence on page 37. And in our heart, strange are the ways of evil. In our heart, there is the first peace we have known in 20 years. So, despite his acknowledgement that he's breaking the law, that he is disobeying, and that he's going in his own direction, he says that he has peace because he is obviously following his heart. And so now, as we read chapter 2, let's continue to focus on where equality's heart takes him and any changes that we recognize inequality along the way. Um, for your double entry journal, I'll have a few um, quotes for you, prepared for you, and I just like for you all to hone in on those quotes, and then you're going to tell me in your double entry journal really the impact that that text example has on him. So you're just explaining a little bit the impact of such a experience on that character. Okay, so let's go ahead and start reading now. Again, I have the graphic novel here just for visual reference as I read, and let's do it. Liberty 5-3000. Liberty 5-3000. Liberty 5-3000. We wish to write this name. We wish to speak it, but we dare not speak it above a whisper. For men are forbidden to take notice of women, and women are forbidden to take notice of men. But we think of one among women, they whose name is Liberty 5-3000, and we think of no others. So when we think again of the laws of this society, they obviously are not allowed to choose who they want to be with for the rest of their lives. So not only are their hopes and dreams and visions and goals um, diminished, but also that choice in love as well. The women who have been assigned to work the soil live in the home of the peasants beyond the city. Where the city ends, there is a great road winding off to the north, and we street sweepers must keep this road clean to the first milepost. There is a hedge along the road, and beyond the hedge lie the fields. The fields are black and plowed, and they lie like a great fan before us, with their furrows gathered in some hand beyond the sky, spreading forth from that hand, opening wide apart as they come toward us, like black pleats that sparkle with thin green spangles. Women work the fields, and their white tunics in the wind are like the wings of seagulls bleeding over the black soil. So there's a lot of imagery in that, but it's basically a huge field with lots of aisles, right? Of whatever it is that they happen to be planting and tending at the time. So lots of separations, I guess, if you can visualize that in the field. And there it was that we saw Liberty 5-3000 walking along the furrows. Their body was straight and thin as a blade of iron. Their eyes were dark and hard and glowing, with no fear in them, no kindness, and no guilt. Their hair was golden as the sun. Their hair flew in the wind, shining and wild as if it defied men to restrain it. They threw seeds from their hand as if they deigned to fling a scornful gift, and the earth was a beggar under their feet. So to me, this image here again is just of a queen, very royal, description here as she is flinging the seeds to the ground, very royally and very elegant and regal in the description of her. We stood still. For the first time did we know fear and then pain. And we stood still that we might not spill this pain more precious than pleasure. Then we heard a voice from the others call their name, Liberty 53000, and they turned and walked back. Thus we learned their name, and we stood watching them go, till their white tunic was lost in the blue mist. And the following day, as we came to the northern road, we kept our eyes upon Liberty 53000 in the field. And each day thereafter we knew the illness of waiting for our hour on the northern road. And there we looked at Liberty 53000 each day. We know not whether they looked at us also, but we think they did. Then one day they came close to the hedge, and suddenly they turned to us. They turned in a whirl, and the movement of their bodies stopped, as if slashed off, as suddenly as if it had started. They stood still as a stone, and they looked straight upon us, straight into our eyes. There was no smile on their face and no welcome, but their face was taut and their eyes were dark. Then they turned as swiftly, and they walked away from us. So if you notice that word taut there, that means kind of tense or without emotion. And so imagine his feelings right then and there, right? Like this is the woman he's been waiting to see every day. It says each day after the first time he saw her, he has an illness waiting to see her again. Like he just has to see her, nervous about it or whatever. And then he sees her, and then the first time that they actually have a connection with each other, she has this tense, emotionless face. So I wonder if we could get into his head right now, what he'd be thinking, right? But let's continue and read on and see if things change. I'm still on page 40. But the following day, when we came to the road, they smiled. They smiled to us and for us, and we smiled in answer. Their head fell back, and their arms fell, as if their arms and their thin white neck were stricken suddenly with a great lassitude. They were not long looking upon us, but upon the sky. Then they glanced at us over their shoulder, and we felt as if a hand had touched our bodies, slipping softly from our lips to our feet. Every morning thereafter we greeted each other with our eyes. We dared not speak. It is a transgression to speak to men of other trades, save in groups at the social meetings. But once, standing at the hedge, we raised our hand to our forehead and then moved it slowly, palm down, toward Liberty 53000. Had the others seen it, they would have guessed nothing, for it looked only as if we were shading our eyes from the sun. But Liberty 53000 saw it and understood. They raised their hand to their forehead and moved it as we had. Thus, each day, we greet Liberty 53000, and they answer, and no man can suspect. They have this unspoken language here, which is really interesting, that, we have these two characters who have connected in a way and have not had a word with each other, but yet they have a language and they're communicating with one another despite the walls and the obstacles that are put in front of them, and they're able to maneuver through those obstacles in order to build a relationship with one another. We do not wonder at this new sin of ours. It is our second transgression of preference, for we do not think of all our brothers as we must, but of only one, and their name is Liberty 53000. We do not know why we think of them. We do not know why when we think of them we feel of a sudden that the earth is good and that it is not a burden to live. Interesting. Like he's starting to try to see, or not trying, it's just happening really, that he's seeing like happiness. Like before, we knew he was at a peaceful place. He was at a peaceful place because he was doing what he wanted to do. But now it's changing even more to this sort of euphoria and excitement for him, which is a new emotion that he probably can't even put to words. Continuing still with page 41. We do not think of them as Liberty 53000 any longer. We have given them a name in our thoughts. We call them the Golden One. But it is a sin to give men names which distinguish them from other men. Yet we call them the Golden One, for they are not like the others. The Golden One are not like the others. Writer Ayn Rand, look at that emphasis on the same pair of set of words, that parallel structure that's being used there, very much for emphasis there on the fact that this character equality sees her in an entirely different way than anybody else. And we take no heed of the law which says that men may not think of women save at the time of mating. This is the time each spring when all the men older than 20 and all the women older than 18 are sent for one night to the city palace of mating. And each of the men have one of the women assigned to them by the Council of Eugenics. Children are born each winter, but women never see their children, and children never know their parents. Twice have we been sent to the palace of mating, but it is an ugly and shameful matter of which we do not like to think. And so once again, we see in this society how emotions are totally removed from them, and that they work to keep their citizens from having thoughts, feelings, emotions, in order to keep them oppressed. Okay? We had broken so many laws, and today we have broken one more. Today, we spoke to the Golden One. The other women were far off in the field when we stopped at the hedge by the side of the road. The Golden One were kneeling alone at the moat which runs through the field, and the drops of water falling from their hands as they raised the water to their lips were like sparkles of fire in the sun. Then the Golden One saw us, and they did not move, kneeling there looking at us, and circles of light played upon their white tunic from the sun on the water of the moat, and one sparkling drop fell from a finger of their hand held us frozen in the air. Then the Golden One rose and walked to the hedge, as if they had heard a command in our eyes. The two other street sweepers of our brigade were 100 paces away down the road, and we thought that International 48818 would not betray us, and Union 53992 would not understand. So we looked straight upon the Golden One, and we saw the shadows of their lashes on their white cheeks, and the sparks of the sun on their lips, and we said, "You are beautiful, Liberty 53000." Their face did not move, and they did not avert their eyes. Only their eyes grew wider, and there was triumph in their eyes. And it was not triumph over us, but over things we could not guess. What things do you think those are that would cause her to feel that triumph? Just think on it for a little while. Then they asked, "What is your name?" "Equality 72521, we answered. "You are not one of our brothers, Equality 72521, for we do not wish you to be." We cannot say what they meant, for there are no words for their meaning, but we know it without words, and we knew it then. "No," we answered, "nor are you one of our sisters. If you see us among scores of women, will you look upon us?" "We shall look upon you, Liberty 53000, if we see you among all the women of the earth." Then they asked, "Are the street sweepers sent to different parts of the city, or do they always work in the same places?" "They always work in the same places," we answered, "and no one will take this road away from us." "Your eyes," they said, "are not like the eyes of any among men." Just before we continue, just look at their exchange and the power in their choice of words and their passion for one another that's being shared, even though this is the first time that they've ever actually spoken to each other. They have this kind of commitment to each other already that they both obviously felt, but were never able to speak until this moment. And so this is a really powerful scene because they are obviously committing to each other here in this, in the way that they are choosing to speak to each other. I'm on page 44. "And suddenly, without cause for the thought which came to us, we felt cold to our stomach." "How old are you?" we asked. They understood our thought, for they lowered their eyes for the first time. 17, they whispered. And we sighed, as if a burden had been taken from us, For we had been thinking without reason of the palace of mating, and we thought that we would not let the golden one be sent to the palace. So he's saying, not my baby, not my woman. That's not going to happen. He's already mentioned how shameful it is and how embarrassing and how hurtful it is. And he doesn't want her to experience that. How to prevent it, how to bar the will of the consul, we knew not, but we knew suddenly that we would. Only we do not know why such thought came to us, for these ugly matters bear no relation to us and the golden one. What relation can they bear? Still without reason, as we stood there by the hedge, we felt our lips drawn tight with hatred, a sudden hatred for all our brother men. And the golden one saw it and smiled slowly, and there was in their smile the first sadness we had seen in them. We think that in the wisdom of women, the golden one had understood more than we can understand. Then 3 of the sisters in the field appeared, coming toward the road. So the golden one walked away from us. They took the bag of seeds, and they threw the seeds into the furrows of the earth as they walked away. But the seeds flew wildly, for the hand of the golden one was trembling. Why do you think her hand was shaking so slightly? Do you believe that it was fear, worry, excitement? What emotion do you think she was feeling at the time that she couldn't throw the seeds with that regal manner that she had when he first saw her working in the fields? Like, obviously something's changed. So what do you think has shifted her being able to cast them so carelessly as before? Yet as we walked back to the home of the street sweepers, we felt that we wanted to sing without reason. So we were reprimanded tonight in the dining hall, for without knowing it, we had begun to sing aloud some tune we had never heard. But it is not proper to sing without reason, save at the social meetings. We are singing because we are happy, we answered the one of the home consul who reprimanded us. Indeed you are happy, they answered. How else can men be when they live for their brothers? Oh, the irony. We know that he's not living for his brothers anymore, but he is living for himself. And so his happiness is not coming from living for his brothers. The happiness comes from living, period, right? Period. All right, let's continue. And now sitting here in our tunnel, we wonder about these words. It is forbidden not to be happy. For as it has been explained to us, men are free, and the earth belongs to them, and all things on earth belong to all men, and the will of all men together is good for all, and so all men must be happy. Yet, there is that beautiful transition that lets us know that things are not exactly as they seem. And so we have this choice of this transition here, because it's apparent that happiness about the earth belonging to men, and that men belong to the earth, and that it's obvious that men are happy is not really what equality sees, if this makes any sense. Yet as we stand at night in the great hall, removing our garments for sleep, we look upon our brothers and we wonder. The heads of our brothers are bowed. The eyes of our brothers are dull, and never do they look one another in the eye. The shoulders of our brothers are hunched, and their muscles are drawn as if their bodies were shrinking and wished to shrink out of sight. And a word steals into our mind as we look upon our brothers, and that word is fear. There is fear hanging in the air of the sleeping halls and in the air of the streets. Fear walks through the city, fear without name, without shape. All men feel it, and none dare to speak. We feel it also when we are in the home of the street sweepers, but here in our tunnel we feel it no longer. The air is pure underground. There is no odor of men. And these 3 hours give us strength for our hours above the ground. Her body is betraying us, for the consul of the home looks with suspicion upon us. It is not good to feel too much joy, nor to be glad that our body lives. For we matter not, and it must not matter to us whether we live or die, which is to be as our brothers will it. But we, Equality 72521, are glad to be living. If this is a vice, then we wish no virtue. Interesting. Like, he is happy, absolutely happy. I'm looking now and I just realized that I guess I went too fast. We were probably still here at this same page, so I'm sorry. So let me just go over. This is what he's saying at night, what he notices, and just the sadness, and he's able to observe and everything, and the fact that he's whistling and happy and proud and prideful now. Okay, and so now here's where we are. Yet our brothers are not like us. All is not well with our brothers. There are Fraternity 2, 5503, a quiet boy with wise, kind eyes, who cries suddenly without reason in the midst of the day or night, and their body shakes with sobs that they cannot explain. There are Solidarity 9, 6347, who are a bright youth without fear in the day, but they scream in their sleep, and they scream, "Help us, help us, help us," into the night, in a voice which chills our bones. But the doctors cannot cure Solidarity 9, 6347. So just thinking about these two examples, what about this shows happiness, right? I mean, these two are paranoid and in pain and having nightmares, and there's nothing happy about that. And it says the doctors cannot cure the, I mean, they can't figure out the reason why. We as the readers, we as the audience, we know why. But, it's unbeknown to even the greatest minds there. And it seems to be that equality gets it too, right? And as we all undress at night, in the dim light of the candles, our brothers are silent, for they dare not speak the thoughts of their minds. For all must agree with all, and they cannot know if their thoughts are the thoughts of all, so they fear to speak. And they are glad when the candles are blown for the night. But we, Equality 72521, look through the window upon the sky, and there is peace in the sky, and cleanliness and dignity. And beyond the city there lies the plain, and beyond the plain, black upon the black sky, there lies the uncharted forest. We do not wish to look upon the uncharted forest, for we do not wish to think of it, but ever do our eyes return to that black patch upon the sky. Men never enter the uncharted forest, for there is no power to explore it, and no path to lead among its ancient trees which stand as guards of fearful secrets. It is whispered that once or twice in 100 years, one among the men of the city escape alone and run into the uncharted forest without call or reason. These men do not return. They perish from hunger and from the claws of the wild beasts which roam the forest. But our consuls say that this is only a legend. We have heard that there are many uncharted forests over the land among the cities, and it is whispered that they have grown over the ruins of many cities of the unmentionable times. The trees have swallowed the ruins, and the bones under the ruins, and all the things which perished. I just want to draw your attention back to the phrase that the people, one among men of the city, escape alone and run into the uncharted forest without call or reason. Just make an inference here. What cause or reason do you think would compel someone to randomly just run out there? Why would someone take this risk to go into the uncharted forest from the lovely life that is being lived, right? Why would somebody just do it? What do you think? Alrighty, so we should be here, this page now. And as we look upon the uncharted forest far into the night, we think of the secrets of the unmentionable times. And we wonder how it came to pass that these secrets were lost to the world. We have heard the legends of the great fighting in which many men fought on one side and only a few on the other. These few were the evil ones, and they were conquered. Then great fires raged over the land, and in these fires the evil ones and all the things made by the evil ones were burned. And the fire which is called the dawn of the great rebirth was the script fire, where all the scripts of the evil ones were burned, and with them all the words of the evil ones. Great mountains of flame stood in the squares of the cities for 3 months. Then came the great rebirth. So if you think about that, it's almost like the book burnings that you all read about when you all read 451 over the summer, the Fahrenheit 451, those of you who read it over the summer. So think about it if you can make that connection while you're reading. Page 49. The words of the evil ones, the words of the unmentionable times. What are the words which we have lost? May the consul have mercy upon us. We had no wish to write such a question, and we knew not what we were doing till we had written it. We shall not ask this question, and we shall not think of it. We shall not call death upon our head. And yet, there is some word, one single word, which is not in the language of men, but which had been. And this is the unspeakable word, which no man may speak nor hear. But sometimes, and it is rare, sometimes somewhere one among men find that word. They find it upon scraps of old manuscripts or cut into the fragments of ancient stones. But when they speak it, they are put to death. There is no crime punished by death in this world, save this one crime of speaking the unspeakable word. We have seen one of such men burned alive in the square of the city, and it was a sight which has stayed with us through the years, and it haunts us and follows us, and it gives us no rest. All right, this is where we are. We were a child then, 10 years old, and we stood in the great square with all the children and all the men of the city sent to behold the burning. They brought the transgressor out into the square, and they led him into the pyre. They had torn out the tongue of the transgressor, so that they could speak no longer. The transgressor were young and tall. They had hair of gold and eyes of blue as morning. They walked to the pyre, and their step did not falter. And of all the faces on that square, of all the faces which shrieked and screamed and spat curses upon them, theirs was the calmest and the happiest face. As the chains were wound over their body at the stake and a flame set to the pyre, the transgressor looked upon the city. There was a thin thread of blood running from the corner of their mouth, but the lips were smiling. And a monstrous thought came to us then, which has never left us. We had heard of saints. There are the saints of the labor, and the saints of the consuls, and the saints of the great rebirth. But we had never seen a saint, nor what the likeness of a saint should be. And we thought then, standing in the square, that the likeness of a saint was the face we saw before us in the flames, the face of the transgressor of the unspeakable word. As the flames rose, a thing happened which no eyes saw but ours, else we would not be living today. Perhaps it had only seemed to us, but it seemed to us that the eyes of the transgressor had chosen us from that crowd and were looking straight upon us. There was no pain in their eyes and no knowledge of the agony of their body. There was only joy in them and pride, a pride holier than it is fit for human pride to be. And it seemed as if these eyes were trying to tell us something through the flames, to send into our eyes some word without sound. And it seemed as if these eyes were begging us to gather that word and not to let it go from us and from the earth. But the flames rose, and we could not guess the word. What? Even if we have to burn for it like the saint of the pyre, what is the unspeakable word? All right, so that's the end of that second chapter. Lots to think about, lots to talk about. I just want to, again, have you think about this character, think about equality, and think about how he has become who he is at this time. If you had to tap into what's given equality his strength, what would you say is it? Is it this experience when he was 10? Is it how he has observed his brothers and their pain and has decided that that's not what he wants for himself? Is it that he is spending his time pursuing his dreams, or is it because he's now in love? What do you think is the greatest influence on the character we know of as Equality 72521? All right, it's up for us to chat about next.